Yes, it is true that two of our founders were deists, not Christians. They were deists, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin. And yet even these deists did not ignore the spiritual foundation of our country. It is interesting that both of these men, Jefferson and Franklin, worked together to propose a national seal for the new United States of America. You know what that seal they proposed was? It was a picture, a drawing of Moses leading the children of Israel out of Egypt, following God as the pillar of cloud. That's what they wanted to be our national symbol.
So a couple of deist non-Christians propose the story of Moses and escaping from Egypt on one side of the seal, and he doesn't mention the two guys, Hengist and Horsa, who they proposed for the opposite side of the seal. These were pagans from about 500 who the English are claimed to be descended from. None of these people are Christians, even Moses. But more importantly, what did the people actually decide on for the national seal? There's absolutely nothing biblical or Christian about the national seal of the United States that all of these supposed Christian founders voted on and accepted. Nothing Christian there.
Benjamin Franklin believed that the Continental Congress should seek God's blessing in an opening prayer every time they met.
Again, he makes no mention of what the convention decided on this proposal. According to David Barton's own website and real historians, this is what Benjamin Franklin said. The convention, except 3 or 4 persons, thought prayer unnecessary. So here you have the unreligious deist Benjamin Franklin, and the rest of the convention decides, no, we don't have to pray. Even in this convention, whatever prayer they did in their own homes, in their own churches, and did not make it an official part of the Constitutional Convention, something that is perfectly acceptable for those of us who want to keep church and state separate.
Look also at the state constitutions in the early years of our country. Every state had a constitution. To attend the Constitutional Convention, a delegate had to be elected by his state. And to hold office in these states, you had to subscribe, in most cases, to a religious test for office. There were qualifications to be a member of the House or Senate in an individual state. There were qualifications to attend the Constitutional Convention. And these states actually had a religious test of faith that were mainly Christian tests of faith. Now today in our constitutional Article 6 says there is no religious test for office that government can impose. But remember the argument of this message. The argument is that the founders were distinctively Christian. If you don't believe this, listen, for example, to what a delegate from Delaware would have to testify to before he could go to the Constitutional Convention. Article 22, quote, "Every person who shall be chosen a member of either house or appointed to any office or place of trust shall make and subscribe to the following declaration. I do profess faith in God the Father and in Jesus Christ, his only Son, and in the Holy Ghost, one God, blessed forevermore. And I do acknowledge the Holy Scriptures to Old and New Testament to be given by divine inspiration." You had to believe that if you were going to be an office holder in Delaware or come to the Constitutional Convention.
So in Dr. Robert Jeffress' own words, the people who went to the Continental Congress were overwhelmingly Christian, he says. He claims they're Orthodox Christians, though I can't prove that one way or another. But those people who were held to a religious test to go to that convention, that Congress, then proceeded to endorse Article 6, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution. No religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. Moreover, that was the 1776 Delaware Constitution that he refers to. And within 3 years of the U.S. Constitution becoming law, the new 1792 Constitution for the state of Delaware Delaware, quoted word for word in place of that religious test for office. It stated word for word the same thing that the new U.S. Constitution said: no religious test shall be required as any qualification to any office or public trust under this state. It's the same statement as in the U.S. Constitution that they had ratified, with the words under this state versus under the United States being the only difference. So Christians, according to Dr. Robert Jeffress, acknowledged separation of church and state, no religious test for office, the exact opposite of what this alleged Christian today wants us to have.
Years ago, two professors from the University of Houston, Charles Lineman and Donald Luntz, did a study to try to determine whom our founding fathers quoted the most.
I suggest you read the article titled, "To My Christian American Friends, Please Stop Citing the Lutz Study." He doesn't just get the names wrong in this, but the facts of the study. These are Christians writing to each other on this article. The percentage of Bible quotations reported in that study, 1, comes from an earlier period than the constitutional period. 2, represents a strongly overweighted minority sample in the data. 3, appears mostly in only 10% of the actual sources included in the study. 4, appears in sources not written by the men who actually did the framing of the Constitution. 5, appears in sources probably not even read by the framers. The study itself excludes the vast majority of relevant material that such a study should have included. We could go on. The article below explains these particulars. I'll note where you can read that article.
And it's that historical fact that caused Ken Woodward, writing in Newsweek magazine in an article, How the Bible Made America, to come to this conclusion. He said, quote, "Now historians are discovering that the Bible, even perhaps more than the Constitution, is our founding document." That is Newsweek magazine.
Dr. Jeffress cites the religion editor at Newsweek magazine, who apparently agrees with Dr. Jeffress. He does not, however, repeat any kind of evidence that would make us believe that that opinion is true. And when Dr. Jeffress tries to present evidence to that effect, so far he has failed.
Consider what some of the things our founding fathers said. Now, there are a lot of Christians out there talking about America being a Christian nation, and they give quotes from our founding fathers that sometimes turn out to be fictitious, spurious quotes.
Just like that George Washington prayer that you're promoting on your website.
So knowing this message would come under the microscope today, we went back and we double-checked and we triple-checked, and in many cases went back to the original sources to verify everything that I'm saying to you today. There's one of our team members right out there who helped us do that. So what did the founding fathers say? George Washington, our first president, in his first inaugural address said, "It would be improper to omit in this first official act my fervent supplications to that almighty being. No people can be bound to acknowledge and adore the invisible hand which conducts the affairs of men more than the people of the United States." Or consider the words of our second president, John Adams, quote, "The general principles on which the fathers achieved independence were the general principles of Christianity. I will avow that as I then believed and now believe that those general principles of Christianity are as eternal and immutable as the existence and the attributes of God, and that those principles of liberty are as unalterable as human nature." President John Adams.
Keep in mind that this is a quote of some 42 words out of a passage of 351 words. John Adams did not believe in the divinity of Jesus, eternal hell, or even in miracles. In this greater passage, it starts off by listing various people of different beliefs, including various Protestant denominations, deist and atheist, and a foreign term which I looked up that means Protestants who believe nothing, something we might call today Christians in name only. But after listing all of these people, including non-Christians, he says they are all united in a certain Christian principles. Well, that Christian principle apparently is not the divinity of Christ. It is not the belief in God. It is not the what you and I would consider the fundamental beliefs of Orthodox Christianity. It is the idea that instead of the divine right of kings, that we have the right of the people to select their own government, the right of people to their own religious conscience, the exact opposite of what Christian nationalists like Dr. Robert Jeffress is promoting. He even lists people in philosophy, religion, and government like Frederick of Prussia, Hume, Gibbon, Bolingbroke, Rousseau, and Voltaire, as well as Newton and Locke, not to mention thousands of divines and philosophers of inferior fame. John Adams says Voltaire was not just not Christian, he was explicitly anti-Christian. So what Christian principle could he and atheists and these others all agree on? Not the idea of Christian Orthodox theology, but the idea that people should have the right to, without compulsion, their own religious views and selecting their own government. It takes extraordinary dishonesty for people to take this cherry picking among this passage and try to use it to promote exact opposite of what John Adams was saying. All these people agree on exactly the opposite of what Dr. Jeffress is proposing. Freedom of religion, separation of church and state versus Christian nationalism. The falsehoods and distortions that he gives us are bad enough, but when he starts discussing in the next parts what he has in store for America and what he wants for America, these are even more significantly disturbing.